Ebola outbreak has killed more than 3,300 people in West Africa.
Ebola continues to gallop along here in Liberia, and unfortunately with no end in sight.
President Obama is urging the world to respond.
Patients are being turned away, and people are literally dying in the streets. Now, here's the hard truth. In West Africa, Ebola is now an epidemic of the likes that we have not seen before.
So this was an epidemic that by all accounts was rapidly spiraling out of control.
What had seemed like a problem far away suddenly was here in the United States.
Faced with this outbreak, the world is looking to us, the United States, and it's a responsibility that we embrace. We're prepared to take leadership on this, to provide the kinds of capabilities that only America has, and to mobilize the world in ways that only America can do.
At the time the Ebola outbreak occurred, the Liberian government was suffering a real crisis of confidence and a real loss of legitimacy and trust in the eyes of its own people.
America responded. You did not run from Liberia.
We collectively, the U.S. military, USAID, the contractors, the health workers that were there on the ground in Liberia, lent legitimacy and needed functionality to their Liberian partners. In a very real sense, we facilitated the rehabilitation of the Liberian state at a time when belief and trust in the messages that state was sending out to its people was absolutely essential. That's what stopped the outbreak.
Our deployment of testing labs, construction of Ebola Treatment Units, or ETUs, around the country, although some in hindsight look at it and say, oh, it wasn't really needed, was absolutely essential and timely.
If you've worked in Liberia, one of the things that really strikes you is the difficulty of the operating environment. Even as someone with a lot of experience across the continent, Liberia is an unusually challenging environment, even for Africa.
You needed to have a logistical capacity that was, shall we say, rough and ready, that was able to be self-contained, that could put in the water system, whatever cooling you needed, fully self-contained in the jungle. And by the way, there's no road to get there. You didn't know where the next case would pop up. It could have been anywhere in this rather vast country, and any one of those cases could happen in an area that was very isolated, no roads, no electricity, no running water. And so that led to this strategy of needing ETUs so that you had it covered region by region.
It's hard to imagine the environment that we're working in here. It's locations that distance-wise aren't that far from the capital. However, it can take days and in some instances weeks to go from point A to point B. We had to bring in and establish an extremely robust supply chain throughout the country, and really the foundation of that was 2 Mi-8 helicopters that we used to set up air bridges. Those air bridges were critical for us to be able to operate here in the country, especially because of the lack of infrastructure, roads, rainy season. PAE was brought into this because we have a unique capability in that we can go into an environment and we can bring a large logistics capacity, we can stand it up quickly, and we can support other organizations.
Once the U.S. military mobilized, they have assets, they're the military, but still they had to rely on organizations that understood the context, organizations that had the mobility, organizations that had the expertise to deliver as quickly as was required the infrastructure that will fight Ebola. But also there was a certain limits to how involved the troops that were here could actually be. And so in places where the scope of the intervention stopped, that's where organizations like PAE that already had a history in the country, that had worked here before, that had the expertise in delivering infrastructure quickly to remote places, that's how they became really, really important.
You don't have the logistics here, and we start having to worry about that as officers. Typically, especially if we don't have the logistics experience and background where we can work it ourselves, and we just don't have that psychological burden about wondering and worrying about where we're going to sleep, where we're going to eat.
We're a clinical organization that has operations and logistics, and in the construction of those ETUs, I will tell you that just thinking about generators and electricity and the overall flow of the ETU was overwhelming.
Staffing an ETU requires obviously a 24/7 rotating schedule. They're hospitals with a principal focus and only focus of taking care of potential or suspect Ebola patients, as well as those who are confirmed, and hopefully getting them to a point that they can recover on their own. Remember, there's no real specific treatment. It's supportive care. In a normal hospital, when you walk onto the ward, you walk onto the ward. In an Ebola treatment unit, when you walk into your care setting where you're going to take care of a patient, it's a 20-minute, very choreographed ordeal that could be your life or your death if you don't do it right, or your colleague's life or death, because a buddy system was employed throughout.
We realized that there was a need, a desperate need for support. It's more of a global issue than just something that is based in Liberia. And on the sole basis of that, we realized that we needed to do that. And that's why we are in Liberia doing what we're doing. It was one of those things that I firmly believe that I needed to do. One thing that I have learned from my father is that no matter how dangerous a situation is, you know how to keep yourself safe to a point where you feel that you are safe.
We just make it work and make it happen where other people can't do that. Given that we have the broad base of leadership, or the talent pool that we have in the leadership.
There were times when we were woken up from our rooms to load trucks in the evening, so everybody had to get their hands dirty. It wasn't just talk all about, doing reports or anything like that. We had to do the job, whatever was there.
I've seen it throughout PAE programs. People are happy to help. We were up during the mobilization stage. Everybody, we were up sometimes in the middle of the night, because that's when trucks came in to deliver material.
Once we made the decision that we wanted to engage in support with USAID, we also had to then get volunteers to be the first ones in country, get on ground and start the effort. As I thought about the task of having to ask someone to lead that effort, I really felt pressure. I felt like I didn't know whether I could go and look somebody in the eye and put that pressure on somebody. But I didn't have to. We were in a planning meeting for the project, and we had several leaders, senior leaders in the company, that never allowed that question to be asked and volunteered. And matter of fact, it was a matter-of-fact moment, because these leaders said, well, of course, we will lead the effort into country.
I think one of the keys here was the PAE ability to recognize the opportunity very, very early on, to recognize the kind of things that would be necessary, the scale, and to be able to approach aggressively the public sector side and say, hey, guys, we're here and we can help.
Coming from a big hospital in Boston, I can certainly appreciate all of the things that happened to let me do my job. There were so many things that went into this, and the Zwedru ETU would not have opened on time or as well as it did if it wasn't for that extra support.
It allows us to really strengthen and enhance the capability of the NGO in the field, where we can come in and provide the air bridge with our helicopters. We can provide a supply chain, make up any kind of differences that they are unable to achieve themselves, and delivering materials and equipment in the field. We can provide them a place to live, we can provide food for them, and any time that they are unable to do that for themselves, we can step in and help them out in the field.
It's the same kind of spirit, the camaraderie spirit of PAE, whereby you not only have to do what you've been assigned to do, you can help out, you know, in different departments where you feel like, you know, to help the speed. Because at the end of the day, you know, when we're being congratulated for a good job, it's not an individual, it's a team effort.
If anything kills over 10 million people in the next few decades, it's most likely to be a highly infectious virus rather than a war.
This was a war. There were Ebola bullets flying around. They were killing people. Diseases don't respect borders.
If we had waited any longer, this epidemic could have broken out regionally or globally and become a true pandemic.
In fact, if there's one positive thing that can come out of the Ebola epidemic, it's that it can serve as an early warning, a wake-up call to get ready.
When this happens again, it might be in a year, it might be in 6 months, it might be in 10 years, but it will happen again. And when I mean it, I'm talking about a large-scale, globally threatening infectious event.
The Ebola response really underscores how critical it is to have those conversations that connect different kinds of organizations together, whether it's the health with the humanitarian, the military with the humanitarian, the private with the NGOs, that you need to understand what each entity brings to the table and have the means to coordinate it for the most effective response.
Our children are back at school. Our borders are open. Our women marketeers are back at work. Our farmers are preparing for the oncoming planting season. And most importantly, our spirits are lifted.
I felt privileged, and I think the whole team feels privileged in the fact that we can support them and help them do their job better.
What's most important is helping people.